Hello, everyone. I don't know if this is loud enough or not. It's my second time using a mic like this, so hopefully it will be loud. If not, just let me know. Okay, so I have 140 slides, so buckle up, everyone. I just wanted to include a ton of things. And yeah, but before that, something extremely important. I wanted to say this to everyone because I want you to look around and see how awesome you all are. I'm extremely, extremely excited to be on stage and to speak to people that I have been inspired by and I've been following and I have been learning from for so many years. I'm not going to mention them all, but literally, I'm super, super happy to be here. So thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me, and thank you for listening to my lovely little talk. So today, we're going to talk about what you really, really need to start machine learning today. And before I start the presentation, I want to do something that I never do because I hate audience participation. But I decided, you know what? It's really cold in the room, so you need to get moving or something. That's what people say when they ask you to do audience participation. So I just want to know, I know there's a ton of technical people in the room, so I basically want to know the ones that consider themselves not so technical. So if you, I already have a hand up, I love it. So basically raise your hand like really slightly, just to let me know that you think that maybe I'm not as technical as the other people in the room and some of these presentations go a little bit over my head. Okay, love it. So this presentation is exactly for you. So we'll cover what you need to get started and we'll also run through some tasks. Basically the tasks that you will get immediate value from. And we'll also run through what you actually need to grow as a machine learning engineer. I'm kidding. As an SEO that uses machine learning. Because let's face it, we're not machine learning engineers. We just want to do our job a little bit faster. That's it. And I do want to caveat, you will have a hard time selling some of these models at this present time because everyone is hyped up on a Gen AI train. But you will see, hopefully, by the end of this presentation, that with some of the classical ML models, you will get faster results, it will be quicker, it will be better, it will be more precise. So if you can actually make that case to your stakeholders, then you can actually sell them these models and these tools and processes, as opposed to using ChatGPT in your firm, which is what we all want to do. So what you really need to start. Most of the people that are getting into machine learning are struggling with limiting beliefs. So maybe you started a project and you kind of failed, or it took you way too long to execute. I don't know, I still see people struggling with entity analysis, and I get it, I completely get it. If you're a complete beginner, you start a project, you work on it, it doesn't really work, and then you use a tool and the results are not really that great and you don't understand what's going on. So that's one case. The other case may be you're thinking that you're not technical enough, that this goes over your head, that whatever the reason, imposter syndrome, right? I'm not good enough to do this. Why should I be doing this? Why am I the person isn't there some more technical person to do this and so on? So these are challenges that not only we struggle with as marketers trying to do something technical, but also data scientists and machine learning engineers. So what you really need is to know when to search for machine learning models, how to actually implement it, what model to use, how to find the precise model that you need to use for the task, and what you can achieve in a very short amount of time to actually get value out of the work that you're doing. So let's start with the basics. For every project that you are working on, you need to think about three things: the characteristics of the tasks, the data, and the solution. So in terms of task characteristics, you can think of machine learning very, very basic understanding. You have supervised, unsupervised. So examples for supervised might be regression and classification. For unsupervised, it might be clustering or dimensionality reduction. And I know this means nothing, so let's simplify it a little bit. You have labeled data. That's what supervised means. You have something to validate your results against. For unsupervised, you don't have a way to validate your results. And what classification means is that you are trying to group things based on characteristics, labels that you already have, just sorting things into buckets. And regression means making predictions, right? Different types of data here. For unclassified, you can cluster things. Again, same thing, but without having those labels, just grouping based on common characteristics, or just reducing, for dimensionality reduction, reducing the complexity of data. So this is a very, very simplified view of the most common things that you'll be working on. But I just want to highlight, machine learning is a massive field, okay? You're not going to become experts in 2 days, regardless of what LinkedIn post tells you that you can be. Sorry, you won't. And this is like a very, a small part of it. So generative AI is in there, transformer models, but you also have like things like forecasting. You also have things like NLP, and also, like part of machine learning are the models that power things like Tesla, for instance, or things like SpaceX or whatever. I can't believe I mentioned 2 Elon Musk products. I'm sorry for everyone. I hate myself as well. So yeah, the field is massive. So bear with that. You're doing something just to make your job easier, not to actually become an expert in it. So that's a good mindset to start. And also, whenever you are choosing the task, what you're going to actually do, also think about if you have the data to self-train a model. Not a lot of you do. I just want to say it, like not a lot of people can actually train a model from scratch. You need a lot of data to do that. Or you can use a pre-trained model, a model that has been trained by a company. Think things like Profit, for instance, for forecasting. It works well because it has a ton of data that it has been trained on. If you're trying to train a prediction model from scratch, it's going to take a ton of time. Or you can also fine-tune a model, which means you take a pre-trained model, you give it a small data set of new data to learn from, and then it can work a little bit better just doing the task on other data that you have. This works very well for niche tasks. So for instance, if you're doing classification on medical articles related to something very niche, I don't want to mention any diseases because I'm in a very good mood today. And also, if you are going down the route of training, do you have enough data to actually train, test, and validate your results? These are questions that you need to ask. So definitely the more harder route when it comes to working with machine learning models. So when it comes to data, think, is your data textual? Is it numeric? Is it image-based? Is it time series? So tons of questions, but that's like the easy part to solve. Then when it comes to solutions, I love this flowchart. I'm very sorry I don't have attribution, but I'm sure I have it somewhere on my website. Is the task mission critical? Like, does your job depend on the project that you're working on? And if it does, why would you want to incorporate AI into it? Like, why would you want to rely on AI? So what really is a pet peeve of mine is the people that tell you that you can actually replace your content strategy with ChatGPT. Like, why would you want that? Isn't your job like a content strategist, Anyway, if you need consistent results every time, unsupervised machine learning is not the way to go. Transformers and LLMs and generative AI is not the way to go. Deep learning is also not the way to go. If you need your results to be easy to understand, to relate to stakeholders, again, deep learning is not the way to go. But if you can just outperform the current methods that you have. So for instance, if you have an intern writing image captions, please don't make them do that job. But if you do, for some reason in 2024, don't raise your hand, please, because I will hate you. But if you do, there's better ways to do that, and the output will be much better. And that goes for meta descriptions, and that goes for even things like title optimizations for certain niches as well. So always assess the usefulness of machine learning models depending on multiple factors, how easy it is to deploy, what's the bottom line, what time are you going to be saving, how easy it is to actually get started utilizing this technology, do you need it to be scaled across an organization, and so forth. So how to find things when you have an idea, you need to keep your queries specific to these 3 characteristics. So if you're writing meta descriptions, for instance, analyze, is your data textual? Yes, it is. Is it mission critical? Not really. Do you need an explanation on how you wrote those 10,000 meta descriptions? Not really. So you can go ahead. For titles, it's a little bit more complex. For certain industries, it might not be a good idea to auto-generate titles. Your money, your life topics are a great example. For image captioning, it's a little bit more of a gray area still, unfortunately. So you can still automate some of these parts, and you can mix and match different models to do that. So let's go to the meat of this presentation, what to actually do to drive immediate value out of machine learning. So I'm going to go through, I don't know how many, I think there are 10 different projects that you can do. So we'll start with text classification. Classification, like we mentioned, we have a list of categories, list of labels, we have content, and we don't know where that content fits in. So we have labeled data, we have the content, we want to put it into these buckets. Easy, right? Quick check-in, who knows, this is a supervised machine learning approach. We are working with textual data, and we do need to have some sort of prediction, and the labels that we are taking are from an API that we will be using. So Google Natural Language API, we will be mentioning it a few times because it has several different models that work very good. They have more than 1,300 categories. I wish there were 13,000, but no. And essentially, the process that we're going to be working with, it will take no longer than 20 minutes, even for the most technically challenged people in the room. We essentially create an API key, we identify the content to scrape the content with Screaming Frog or your crawler of choice, even if I'm sure most of you have actually built a crawler, so you do you. Enter the URLs and the content, and then get the data. It's good because you not only get some categories, you have primary, secondary, tertiary categories, and even deeper levels for some of these, but you also have a precision score. Why is this good? Because you, as the person completing this task, can set a threshold to say everything below 70% is not a good classification. That's not accurate enough, and I'm not going to be using that. So this is very good to actually justify why some of these articles you might want to send for manual review to be reclassified, or you might want to classify them yourself and implement something like AutoML, which is fine-tuning algorithm, like we mentioned at the start, to actually improve the prediction accuracies for these articles. There's a plug-and-play template in Looker Studio on ML for SEO, and you will be able to actually interactively see which of those categories, when you click on them, what categories they're made out of. So here, if you actually look at the primary categories, you will see things like news or arts and entertainment, or there's things like health and politics and things like that. So what are those? These are really good, like primary categories, and then categories on your site, right? And then you have secondary and tertiary that you can use for tagging systems if you don't really have a good tagging system in place. So even if you just implement that or tweak them a little bit, you will have improved your internal linking for the content on your website immediately, right? So again, with the template, you can do a little bit more. So some of the people in the room are probably thinking, I've seen someone on LinkedIn do this for 2 minutes, not 10 or 20. Why shouldn't I do this with ChatGPT? Because it can also give me some classifications, right? Basically, well, it's not trained for this task. So ChatGPT is a general purpose model. It's trained on a lot of text, and it gives you unpredictable results. So every time you run it, it will give you different categories, and it will not give you any precision score. You can ask, of course you can ask. It will give you some numbers, but that's not really a precision score, is it? So this is why if you need tasks with precision, which you do because you're a professional, technical SEO, you like numbers, you do need to use a tailored, specified model that has been trained for this task specifically. And this is why, in this particular instance, Google Cloud's API wins. Let's talk about clustering. Very, very similar in nature, but here we don't have the labels. We only have the content. We want to see what are the similar topics that the content tackles so that we can actually group the content together. This is very good. If you see on this list of 1,300 categories that you don't see categories that match your site's content. So it essentially gives you the main topics, but most importantly, it also gives you how these topics interconnect within separate pages. What this means is every topic is tackled by different pages simultaneously because there are subtopics mentioned in the content. Because as we humans write, we don't only write on one thing, we mention different entities and different semantically related concepts and so on. So that's what this topic modeling algorithm actually does. There is a video, no coding needed, just 20 minutes of your time or whatever, just to implement LDA no-code topical modeling on your website. What it gives you is all of the different topics on your site, how they connect to one another, how similar they are, how closely linked they are to one another. But most importantly, it also gives you, for individual pages, the different topics that are mentioned within those pages. So if you're following my drift, this is a very, very good way to improve your internal linking systems on your site very easily. But you can also use something that's a lot more complex in terms of the model, because LDA is quite basic. It came out like 20 years ago. So BERT topic is an alternative that is a lot more recent, and it has been created by a marketer that actually turned an ML engineer. That could be you in like a couple of years or something, I don't know. So it gives you the opportunity to actually build your own custom model using different choices of architecture at each of the steps that need to be performed. This works very well if you're a really big nerd and a techie, you're doing topic modeling all the time for different companies, industries, websites, and so forth, and you want to test out different configurations to see what works best. And it follows the same principle. It embeds the documents, it semantically groups them together, and it extracts the topic models. So how you would structure that in a project, we already talked about classification. Get those classes. These are your primary categories. You also have a very overall naming or group for your content. But you can also get topic models and subtopics, and then you can also extract entities and link articles together based on these three things. So you can link pages that mention the same subtopic. You can also link based on the same or semantically related entities, and you can also improve your categorization and tagging system on your website. This shouldn't take you more than an hour, so quick wins here. Let's talk about keyword clustering. So again, dimensionality reduction here. We are essentially taking a keyword and we're only selecting one word or two words from it, depending on your configuration, to say these are the most important terms in this keyword. This is not entity analysis, but I don't need to explain that to you, but still, these are the most semantically important terms. So how it works, again, tokenizes, extracts embeddings, and then it gives you the most important word. So in simple terms, from every sentence, from every keyword, you have one word that is, the most vital one. That's how every keyword clustering tool works, more or less. There's a great video for beginners just to understand how it works. But essentially, you can identify one word. You can also choose to identify a bigram, which is a link of two words. And they don't need to, very crucially, they don't need to be following one another in the keyword that you provide, which is very important. Because otherwise, it won't be as accurate, right? And you can also give a full content piece to actually identify the main terms from the content that you have and actually see if you're overstuffing with the keywords that you have. But you don't want to do this. You just want to give it a Google Sheet spreadsheet, and you just want it to give away the keyword categories and the clusters and all of that stuff. You can't do that. So Google Colab is linked in the slides. You'll get the slides later. You give it the keywords. It gives you a list of the primary term, and it also gives you the bigram. Awesome, right? Let's talk about entities. I'm not going to tell you what the difference between keywords and entities is. You can ask me later if you want, but I'm sure you already know it. But why it is important to actually not think just about topics, but also think about the entities that make up the topic? Well, because that's what all of the search engines are doing. That's what people are doing. Whenever you are thinking about a certain topic, you're also thinking about all of the things that need to happen related to that topic. If you're traveling to a conference, you're thinking about your travel, how are you going to get there? Are you going to use an Uber, which is a company? And are you going to sit next to your friend, Sam Torres, that is a person? You know, all of these types of things. That's how you're thinking about everything. So again, process to identify entities shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes. You run a script, same like before, same API key, you already have the key, and you get the entity data in seconds. What is awesome about this is you get not only the identified entity from the content, but you also get what type of entity it is, how prominent it is, how important is it for the text that you have analyzed, how many times it has been mentioned, and also what are the different types of wordings that are being used whenever this entity is mentioned. So for instance, for an entity like Barack Obama, he could be mentioned like Barack, Mr. Obama, former president of the United States, best person in the world or whatever. I'm sure some people regard him as such. So essentially, you do have all of this. And you also have a link to like a Wikipedia page or something that could show you whether this is a very prominent entity just in your data set, if it doesn't have a Wikipedia page, or if it's a very prominent entity in the world overall, if that makes sense. What possible data points can you use this in SEO? Basically everything. You can analyze your content, analyze your competitors' content, you can scrape YouTube videos and analyze the entities that are being discussed over there. You can also do the same for Reddit, any social mentions. You can analyze your customer feedback that you're collecting, and it's just sitting, collecting dust for nobody to analyze. And you can also do internal link, text anchors, and all of these cool stuff. Does it matter how you do it? Yeah, of course it does. Don't use ChatGPT for this. I promise I will get to a section with good use cases for ChatGPT. It's coming. But use a tailored model. Use a model that has been custom trained for this job. Again, here, why does an API like Google Cloud's API win, or even the ones that Azure or AWS have? Because they're trained for this job. They give you a ton of data that is precise. They give you data that you can actually further analyze. And they don't hallucinate. They don't give you entities that are not actually entities, you know? And these are the type of entities that they use in their knowledge graph as well. So why wouldn't you use the models that they use? It doesn't make any sense. Cool, so let's talk about fuzzy matching then. That's similarity between two strings. I have a 30-minute video on it. I'm not going to bore you with the details. You can talk to Patrick wherever he is. He was here a second ago, but he no longer is. Essentially, how to use that for redirect mapping, check the similarity between URLs. He has a great script for that. You can also use the same to actually analyze competitor titles and meta descriptions from SERP analysis, but you can also use that to actually detect whether you should have a structured data type on your website. This is a cool project. A lot of the companies are now automating this, but it is a cool project just to kind of test your skills. So from a blog post, for instance, if you see question marks in your headings, and headings that are titled the way that FAQs would be titled, then you can run the cell, paste the output. The script is going to tokenize everything, and it's going to give you structured data in an FAQ format, right? Easy. For more complex websites, you can use something like AutoML. And massive shout out to Hamlet Batista, may he rest in peace, because he was one of the biggest inspiration in my career. And this is an article from him for like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, so he was like way ahead of everyone. So yeah, massive shout out. Okay, content moderation. Same API, by the way. We're still working with the same API. That's the third mention, but there's 2 more use cases, which I'm not going to mention in this presentation. What the content moderation model does is it automatically analyzes text for inappropriate or undesirable content. it wants to show you how to maintain a clean and professional data set without manually reviewing each entry. And when I read that, I was like, that's cool. Is that not like detecting whether the content is your money or your life? Because that sounds awfully similar to what Lily Ray has described that it means, right? Topics that affect your happiness, health, financial stability, or safety. So if you look at the categories that this API that is owned by Google does, it's actually those 4 categories, right? You have things like, is it a health-related topic? Is it religion? Does it talk about guns or like public safety and things like that? So if you have, again, scraped content, run it through the API, it actually analyzes whether your content falls into any of these categories. So if you see red here, well, you're actually talking about something that's your money or your life. And should you be? I don't know. It depends on your website. But if you see your rankings tanking and you have no explanation, give it a go. Maybe you'll find some little snippets that your content writers are putting in their personal opinions on your company blog. And you're actually going to see that, they shouldn't be, So I scraped Reddit, actually, to show you how it works. And, of course, there's SEO Reddit, sorry, which is even better. So there's a ton of different opinions there. There's some posts that are fine, some posts that are not fine. So basically, that's how it works, yeah. Not going to spend too much time on this. And the possible data points here are your content, your competitors' content, YouTube video transcripts, again, social media mentions, comments on your website, community posts that you are managing, like forums and things like that, just to make sure that everything is running correctly. Okay, exciting stuff. We don't want to be working on blogs anymore. I see a ton of consultants transitioning slowly from SEO to marketing and talking more about the YouTube landscape, TikTok, and all of the other stuff. So if you have a TikTok presence, but you don't have a blog, you can transcribe it. There's a ton of tools that you can use. Again, the bigger tools work better, but there are still no-code approaches that you can incorporate in your day-to-day, but the bigger tools are still better, with the exception, again, of OpenAPI's Whisper, which only works if your video is under 5 minutes long, and if it is not in a small language. So if it is in English, it will work. Caveat, I'm not saying spam your blog with auto-transcribed content. And I'm not saying scrape your competitors' YouTube videos, transcribe, and get traffic to the moon, bro. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you can bridge the gaps between different teams if you're working in an enterprise organization and if they are creating really good webinar-style interviews, content, you can actually turn that into videos. For instance, our lectures right now are recorded. The conference organizers can come to the lectures, and they can ask us, would you like us to create a blog post? They can transcribe that, easy peasy, traffic to the website, right? That's what I am saying. Make your content work harder, distribute better. And use transcription for competitor analysis as well if you are trying to enter YouTube as a niche. Mix and match with different approaches. So for instance, you can scrape audio, transcribe, you can classify the content, categorize, create subtopics, extract entities, and all of these cool stuff. Again, like we discussed, incorporate that into your strategy, and boom, you're not only thinking about blog content, you're thinking about the YouTube landscape as well. You can do the same in the other formats, so text, audio. This is even more complex in terms of understanding how not to spam the web with trash. But still, programmatic approaches, they exist. Google Cloud works really good. I'm not saying fill YouTube with trash, please don't. We already have enough of it. But what I am saying is certain content formats don't really require a rich video format to accompany them. And that's tutorials, that's documentation, that's interview styles that only exist in blog format. And you can also add automation like person-to-camera videos without actually having to record full-blown, like hundreds of thousands of tutorials by creating digital avatars that work quite well for content that doesn't really need to be as personal. So text-to-text transformation, okay, I told you we're going to talk about OpenAI and good use cases. So here, any kind of LLM can work for transforming your blog content to social media posts. So that works quite well. There's awesome GPTs from Caitlin Hathaway. Any LLM is going to do a good job here if you want to transform your blog posts to newsletter editions, to social media posts, transform PDFs into actionable guides, and so forth. Amazing stuff. And while we're on the topic of LLMs doing a good job, if you have structured data, so for instance, if you have like database of statistics for NBA players, like what Elias did, you can create a prompt for an LLM and actually create content based on the structured data. But you can also do the same for user reviews to build a summary of what people think overall for your product. You can also do the same for product databases to build individual product descriptions. If you combine structured data, you reduce the opportunity for the LLM to hallucinate, and you're actually working with data that is real life, right? Another good use case is to write titles using fuzzy matching as well. You take your queries from Search Console, you scrape the titles and the headings and all of the other stuff. You essentially combine the queries with the titles, and you generate new titles using OpenAI that contain partially some of these queries to make them more user-friendly. Okay, we're done. A ton of ideas. Hopefully you implement at least some of them. But what you really need to grow in this field, in my opinion, because this is a very introductory level talk, you need the right mindset. You need a community of people that are learning and failing and achieving things right alongside you. And you also need resources that are beginner-friendly, intermediate, advanced. So that's what I'm trying to build at ML for SEO. We have a ton of free resources. We have a newsletter. We have a Slack community with over 400 people in it, which I'm still surprised by. But so many people learning machine learning for SEO. We also have free templates. Everything that has been talked about in this presentation is there already. And also blog posts and all of the other cool stuff. There will also be an academy that will launch later this year. And you can always contact me and talk to me about the projects that you're working on. I would love to help you out and see what people are doing with this technology, if it's not ChatGPT. So thank you so much for listening.